35-year-old male, and I'm dumbfounded by my wife's mother. She is confusingly toxic and I don't understand what can be done about it. My wife and her mother, let's just say their relationship confuses me because I've never experienced anything like this. My mother is everything you can ask a mother to be for me. But my mother-in-law, she tells my wife she is a failure and act ashamed of her. Which makes zero sense if you knew her. She don't drink, don't drug, very religious, active in 2 church choirs, always held down a job, and her kids are her life. Even on Mother-Daughter Day her mother posted pics of her nieces whom she said she felt like their mother. But no social media post or even words at all for my wife, her daughter. An only child. We got married earlier this year and she didn't come and said she would never come cause she doesn't support our marriage. And she said why she don't is because we disrespected her. I did by proposing to my wife before asking her if I could, and my wife for accepting it knowing I was disrespecting her. Like I've had 1.5 conversations with this lady, when she around me she looks always and act like I'm not there. If she had a valid reason or I did something that's can't thing, but I've never had any negative situations with my wife and I've never did anything to her mother. It makes zero sense. She said my wife didn't listen to her when she told he not to move to our current location. She said told her it wasn't a good idea and she didn't listen, so whatever happened to her happened to her. Keep in mind my wife is 32 years old. And had a previous marriage that lasted 7 years. Which her mother didn't approve of. Even when my wife had her second child her mother didn't see him till he was 11 months old because, and I quote, I told her not to get pregnant again. The girl was married living with her husband and you told her what? There is more, but I really didn't know there were parents out there like this. My wife doesn't even curse. She's never even had S ticket. She's 32 and been with 2 guys her whole life, and both she was married to. It's so confusing, I just don't understand her. Her mother called her phone and just say, can I talk to my grandkids? Don't even acknowledge her daughter whose phone she just called. I'm smart enough to know stay out of people's parent problems, don't even give an opinion on it. So I've never expressed or voiced anything negative about her mother to her. But I see she would like a relationship with her and seems like her mother would want them, same being her only child. Comment. Please get your wife into therapy. She doesn't know she can make the decision not to have a relationship with her toxic mother. She sounds like she was brought up to obey at all times and her mother doesn't respect that. Stopped when your wife became an adult. Your children should also not have contact with Mill. You don't know what she's telling them about their mother and you. She could be telling them lies about you both, trying to alienate them from both of you and teaching them that disrespecting you both is an acceptable behavior. Mill needs to be cut out of your lives. I hope your wife can realize this one day soon. Your Mill punishes your wife when she doesn't do what Mill wants. She has done that to your wife for her entire life. When your wife showed any independence of thought, Mill would punish and humiliate your wife. Your wife has a fantasy of wanting a healthy mother-daughter relationship, so she keeps going back looking for it. But that's not her reality. She will never have a loving relationship with her mother because her mother wants to control everything about your wife's life, and your wife is an adult and will never be able to meet her mother's demands. Your wife needs therapy from an experienced trauma therapist. Your wife experienced emotional and mental trauma as a child from her mother, that changes how a person processes situations. Your wife keeps going back to her mother because that is all she knows. She needs an experienced trauma therapist to help her unpack her childhood, and undo all the damage her mother did to her mentally and emotionally. Your wife probably doesn't even recognize it as abuse. To her, she is the disobedient child being punished for being disobedient, even though she still wants her mother's love. Your Mill should not be allowed around your wife or the kids. But your wife is going to need a lot of therapy from the appropriate therapist for her to realize that, because your wife's normal meter is broken. The trouble is trying to make sense of nonsense. You can't. I know I tried for far too long. This is why therapy is a good idea. If you go onto Reddit on a computer, you should find plenty of resources, more easily, of more immediate help for you to help yourself and your wife. Many of these types of people have mental health issues and see the world in a diluted way. A medical professional is the best way forward. Try to read other posts on here, as there are plenty with helpful ideas to try in the meantime, like a timeout to give your wife time to recuperate and make informed decisions. Good luck. Does your wife ever say anything to you about her mother's behavior? You didn't really mention that in your post. Remember, this treatment is all she's ever known, it's her normal. Even if she knows it's not okay, she may be doubting her own thoughts or making excuses for her mother to avoid confronting the situation head on. Sorry to say, if you continue to say nothing and your wife doesn't talk about it with you, then I don't see how you can suggest therapy just like that. You may need to start gently commenting, in the moment. Mill calls, doesn't greet your wife? Say something like everybody else greets you when they call your phone. I don't know why your mother thinks it's okay to do that to you. Hopefully your wife will start to open up to you about how it makes her feel, then you can start to bring up therapy as an option to help her understand her mother's behavior and put up healthy boundaries. Next story 2. Finally told my mill off and then some. Why do I feel so guilty? Sorry for the novel. I need an unbiased opinion, please. So I posted here a few months ago just venting about some of the narcissistic things my mill does. For context, I am and my husband is also. During the course of our relationship, it has been riddled with mean, unnecessary comments from my mill. Examples: one of my husband's sisters told me that Mill was spreading a rumor about me that I smelled like cigarette smoke while I was pregnant with my daughter, which is absurd considering I didn't even eat dyed foods or take medication while pregnant. She has insulted me about having a C-section. Context on this: she has a 10-year-old adopted daughter. Christy, my mill, kept saying that Milo was her baby. My little Sil said, "Mama, that's Donnie's baby because she went through all the hard work of labor." To this, my mill scoffed and replied, "Hard work? Danny had a C-section, which is so easy. I'd rather go through a C-section than to have delivered naturally like I've done." My husband has defended me on every single one of these occasions. My grandma suffered a heart attack last year and we strongly believe in the power of prayer. Just as his mom has asked us to pray for her and her relatives, we asked the same about my grandma. She was completely dismissive and said, "Wow, how sad, oh Logan. You're never going to believe what happened to me today." She always comments on my weight, saying how skinny I am, too. The straw that broke the camel's back is my husband and I got into a very heated argument last weekend and he called his mom to help mediate. She decided that it would be a good idea to include my Phil and my Sil in this conversation. I was getting ganged up on and all of the fault was being placed on me. I had none of my family there to back me up. My husband then had to step in to defend me and take accountability for his actions in the argument. What happened is I called the police because my husband was screaming and slamming things in the house and he held his fists up out of anger. I was held at gunpoint by my own father while I was 15 and had been beaten. It was a hostage situation, so I am very easily triggered and have a hard time trusting. My mill completely justified his actions and told me calling the cops was unwarranted and that she knows her son would never hurt me. I can admit that I don't think my husband would hurt me, but my reaction was out of fear. This really hurt my feelings and had been bothering me, so my husband called her the next day to tell her about how hurt I was. She said she didn't understand why I was hurt when she was helping. She then brought up my family's dysfunction, which is hurtful because I had a less than pleasant childhood due to abuse. She also told me that I'm not the only one who has suffered trauma. She told my husband that I don't know how to act in a relationship because of my parents. She then made an analogy and said, "It's kind of like when someone first gets a puppy and they don't know what they're doing. Danny has had so much dysfunction, so she can't help it that she doesn't know how to be a wife." This sent me over the edge. She dismisses all of my feelings. I let these feelings brew until Friday. I finally mustered the courage to call her. I told her how I was feeling, and when I told her it wasn't her place to talk poorly on my family and it hurt my feelings because my trauma I experienced as a child is very hurtful and embarrassing, she said, "If that's offensive they better lock me up." I confronted her about the C-section comments, and the smoking allegations. She denied both until my husband stepped in. She then hung up on us and called back 20 minutes later claiming her phone died. She continued to dismiss my feelings and refused to take accountability for the hurtful things she said. Instead, she told me that I've done plenty of things to hurt her. I asked for an example and she said she'd have to consult with her husband first. I am the most meek and timid person I know. I hate confrontation, so I was confused by this. She then starts talking poorly of my mom and dad and blamed them for how I see the world and insinuated I'm a lost cause. After this I went off. I screamed and told her how she's fucked up every one of her children and how she's just a miserable woman. She talks poorly about all of her kids and they all have severe depression issues. She blames her husband's genes. But at the end of the day, who is the common denominator? I told her this. I also told her it goes beyond nature versus nurture because now the 2 little girls she adopted are in therapy too, and she's had them since they were newborns. She talks about how one of the little girls' birth mothers is such a wonderful mom now to her new son, and I can tell this hurts the little girl's feelings, so I called her out on this and how she's not as perfect as she thinks. I overstepped, but she did too. She then told me, "Well, if only you knew how Logan truly felt about you." And then she started recording the conversation and simmered down, pulled the victim card, and told us she has to get off the phone to go pray. Why do I feel so bad now when I'm not the only one who got out of line? I've texted her an apology twice and she's ignoring me. Was I out of line? Did I have no business for telling my mill off? Comment. Why are you apologizing for your honest feelings? Get a damn backbone. There's nothing wrong for standing up for yourself. You're a mother. Do you want your child to watch you being bullied repeatedly? What kind of example is that? Your husband needs help too. You were right to call the police. That kind of rage is dangerous, especially with a child around. Then running to mommy to validate that rage? Come on. Stop the people pleasing and look around and take stock of your life. It's time for therapy. Seriously. Wow. Okay, lots to unpack. First though, never ever apologize to Mill again. You did nothing wrong. She's very narcissistic and manipulative. You also have an so problem. The fact your husband was being violent enough to trigger your PTSD isn't okay. He needs anger management therapy. Husband needs therapy for his childhood trauma as well. His mother is never to be brought into your marriage again. WTF was he thinking? Mill made it so much worse. Also, you should be in therapy for your childhood trauma as well. You also should be in marriage counseling because holy shit. You and husband need to set serious boundaries and consequences for his mother. Honestly, at this point you and Lo should be NC for a while, if not permanently. And husband should be low contact to NC as well. Phil can still have a relationship without his wife. She's way too toxic to be around you and Lo. She's not a safe person for your mental health, so that means she's not safe for your child. Sorry, I couldn't even finish reading past the point where your idiotic husband called his mommy to mediate an argument where he was threatening his wife with fists. You didn't get out of line at all. You called her out on years of issues. But you seriously need to be NC with her and take a very hard look at your marriage. It is not healthy. Him having your back in a few arguments does not make up for his wretched behavior. Marriage therapy might help, but that is the minimum. This is not safe for you or your children.